ואנו מכריזים בזאת
Noor, we're recording this show just a few days after the Israel President Isaac Herzog paid a state visit to Bahrain and met both with the King and the Crown Prince of Bahrain. And as a result of that visit, the Crown Prince of Bahrain is planning to visit Israel and Jerusalem probably in a few weeks' time. This is part of the Abraham Accord. This is part of the new configuration in the Middle East between democratic Israel and the moderate Arab states. Do you think that the moves now taking place, the shifts taking place in the progressive parts of the Middle East, the more developed parts of the Middle East, the more democratic and civilized parts of the Middle East, that this is going to help you in explaining your views in the various Muslim communities in Great Britain?
Barry, Abraham Accords, what I see, Abraham Accords is not only a peaceful agreement, it's not an initiative. This is a history. This is a history, two countries, two people, two nations, two religions, two ideology. They are making the history. And this history will bring a peace not in the now era, but the era of our generations. Because in the last 5 decades or 7 decades, since the creation of Israel, Arab countries never seen a peace, as even in a single day. Israel, every single day, Israel is at war between two cousins, between Muslims, Arabs, and Israelis. This is not a creation of these wars, or this hatred is not a creation of God. This is a creation of a political hegemony. Abraham Accords will bring a peace into every single country of the region. This is a phenomenal agreement. This is a fantastic step Israel has took along with the Arabs towards a better future and betterness of the new generations. I believe every single country who involved or have signed the agreement Abraham Accords is and will see the peace in the near future. They will open the new era in the technology, agriculture departments, political, religious, security, or diplomatic relations between these all countries. I think more Muslim countries should join the Abraham Accords, because look at the name of the Abraham Accords. This is not only the political, it's a religious harmony as well, because this is a religion of Abraham that we Muslims and Jews are the descendants. And we have so much similarity between the Sharia of Moses and the Sharia of Muhammad. So I think more countries should join Abraham Accords. This is the only way towards the peace. Because in the last 7 decades, in the war, we didn't achieve anything. Both nations have suffered a lot. We need to end this for ourselves, for our religion, for the stability of the region, and for a peaceful future for our incoming generations.
You know, they used to say, these are the American foreign affairs experts and the European foreign affairs experts, that peace can never be achieved between Israel and the Arabs until Israel is forced to accept peace with an unrepentant Palestinian entity. And the Abraham Accords have turned 50 years of misguided lack of diplomacy on its head. And it works, hopefully is going to work the other way around, that the moderate Arab states are the ones who are going to not impose, but perhaps cajole or persuade whoever is leading the Palestinian camp to come together and adopt the same approach that they did, in that obstructionism, hatred, violence, terrorism can never bring peace. And security and prosperity only comes when they moderate their objections for the idea, or even the notion of having a Jewish state anywhere in the Middle East. I think that message could be employed by you and others in all communities inside Britain, not just to the Muslim communities, but I think even your voice into the Jewish community with this sort of message is very useful. I would like to end up by telling our viewers that you received the Lifetime Achievement Award in the House of Lords in Britain a few years ago. Can you tell me how you received that well-deserved award?
Thank you, Barry. It was a great honor. Dr. Filippo, she had organization and she was running the organization for many decades. And their organization's aim was to bring peace activists together. And she was very much, she was MEP, member of British Parliament, and she was very much inspired about the work what I was doing to bring two people of Pakistan Israel together under the banner of Pakistan Israel Alliance that I had founded a few years ago, and that was a great achievement when I received a letter from the organizations that Lords are very happy to invite me and offer me the Life Achievement Certificate Award about what I'm doing doing for the peace between two nations and two countries, and it was a phenomenon. I have been first time entered in the House of Lord, and I delivered a short speech there among different among the people from the different background, and the Lord Jude, he honored me with a Life Achievement Awards. Fantastic! I will never forget this. Thank you very much for those who arranged this ceremony.
This is very short the view from Israel, that my special guest is Noor Dahri, who in Britain is an expert in counterterrorism and Islamic terrorism extremism. Noor, tell me, you have written a number of books. Speak to me about the book you wrote, Global Jihad, Islamic Radicalization and Counter Strategy. What was the purpose of this book? What's the message you're giving?
Barry, there are thousands of books are written on Islamist terrorism. And this book I have written when I completed my online course from ICT. And I had, obviously, as I mentioned you earlier, that I had a very dark past when I have been involved, drawn into the Islamist extremism, and I was taken to Afghanistan and Kashmir to conduct jihadi trainings. So I knew I was a personally victim of that. So I knew it, how these clerics are recruiting people, what type of material they are using, what type of narrative they build, and how they lure youngsters, specifically the teens, into the terrorism or extremism, and how radicalization works under the banner of Islam, ism. and how these Islamist clerics manipulate and misuse the Islamic texts. So I had a vast experience because these were narratives I have been possessed for a long time, and I embrace the devil face of devil ideology of Islamism. And so I thought, why not? I should write something which help my Muslim community and other people with the understanding how these drivers work and how we should de-radicalize youngsters from Islamism and drawn into the extremism. And this is why I've written the Global Jihad, Islamic Radicalization and Counter History, the book. Fantastic. It was my first book and first experience. Um, when people read it, they will see it what I have written. But still, there were so many topics which I could not cover because this was my first introduction of global jihad, Islam radicalization. But now I'm working on my new book, which is half nearly ready and half is because in the book I'm specifically focusing on what are the narrative of jihadist narrative, what are the Islamist narratives, how to counter them through Islamic theology, and what is the Islamist terrorism. The book, I think, will open a new door to the people who are confused between the political Islam and Islam with the ideology of Islamism and Islam itself as a religion. I think the new book will bring us some change, specifically among a new generation of my own community.
I'll just remind our viewers that when Noor refers to ICT, in fact, she's talking about the International Institute for Counterterrorism here in Israel. But Noor, in that book, you say this expression that I wrote down: we are stuck between two world orders, Islamic and the democratic world order. It seems the two can't live peacefully aside each other. But as I read that, my mind came to the situation we have in Israel. Would you apply that same measuring stick between the divided Palestinian leadership on the one hand and democratic Israel on the other, with a Western style democracy? And a Palestinian leadership apparently rooted in outdated rejectionism based on Arabic or Islamic anti-Semitism. So what you were talking about, the Islamic movement and extremism in a different form, or perhaps the same form, that you see a parallel between that and the conflict we have right now between Israel on the one hand and the Palestinians, whether that be the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, Palestinian Front for the Liberation of Palestine on the one hand, and their rivals in Gaza, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, both hating each other, but at the same time hating Israel perhaps equally or even more.
Barry, what I see in Israel, there is a very powerful democracy. And I can say it's a very powerful, strong, and the first democracy in the Middle East as a Western style in democracy. Other hand, unfortunately, in the Palestinians, people are victims of their own people, own community, the victims of their own political leaders, whether they are secular, atheist organizations, or a religious Islamist organization like Hamas. Peace cannot be obtained from the one side. You can't clap in one hand, you have to clap with both hands. You have to unite both hands to achieve the goal. But unfortunately, on one hand, there is a democracy, powerful, strong democracy, and the other hand, there is a no democracy. They have their own internal conflicts. They are talking about their independent country, independent state of Palestine. How Israel can achieve, or how Israel can provide them independent state while there are three factions and each faction is fighting each other. Which state should be run? The state should be, Palestinian state should be run by Hamas, Islamist terrorism, who want every single Jew into the sea, or the Palestinian Authority, which is a most corrupt political entity in the Palestinian administration area, or the third group, which run by Iran. Democracy is the only path to bring a peace between Israel and Palestinian. Hamas should be completely disarmed. Palestinian Authority, they must have a democracy. They must have every 4 years, they must have a election. And people have their own basic right to choose their leader who lead the nation, right? In this case, people are seeing towards Islamist organizations. Why? Because of the corruption in the Palestinian Authority area. People are victims of their administration. People are living in a below level of poverty. And they blame everything on Israel. Israel is a completely different, separate state than the Palestinian Authority. They have given a majority of the freedom rights, institution rights to the Palestinian Authority. But if you look at, they have a 13, 14 years. Mahmoud Abbas has no election. Mahmoud Abbas has no conduct any type of election or the given right of the vote to the people. In this case, people will see other entity, which is Hamas. So I think democracy. I think the Palestinian Authority, they should make a democracy, should obtain the democracy in the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas should realize that fighting directly or indirectly with Israel is not achieving any betterness for their people. Blockade of Gaza can be lifted if they disarm their arms against the state of Israel. Then Gaza could be free of movement, because Israel cannot give the independence to the people, to the region who seek the destruction of their country, because this is a big security threat around Israel. And the good thing is, through the Abraham Accords, even before the Abraham Accords, Arab nations realized that they cannot use a Palestinian card, because Palestinian card have weakened their own what I call weaken their own ability in the international community, weaken their own narrative in the international community. So they have to leave the Palestinianism, leave the Palestinian card which they did it, and finally they embrace the Abraham Accords. And their people are getting multiple benefits through the Abraham Accords. The world are seeing and the nation is experiencing. So the same message could pass to the Palestinians, that they have only one way to get freedom, to achieve the freedom of movement, freedom of expression, freedom of basic human rights, and opportunity to bright their future through Abraham Accords. The Palestinians have only one option, that is to embrace the Abraham Accords. And the Abraham Accords will definitely give them more rights than what they achieve. And maybe if they I believe if they accept Abraham Accords, one day they will have their own state, but democratic and peaceful state, not militant or armed or corrupt state.
Yes, the one thing, of course, that Israel is fully aware of is that, especially if we take the European diplomats and the European governments who are trying to force Israel into a two-state solution based on non-existent 1967 armistice lines. Even if we were to do this without taking care of our security, we could ending up with some sort of agreement with the Palestinian Authority and waking up in the morning with Hamas in charge of the Palestinians. I would expect people who are critical of the steps or non-steps that Israel takes be aware of that. Let me come on to another of your books. You wrote a book called Marketing Terrorism, the Continental Fear on Middle East to Asia and Africa. What was the purpose and the intent of marketing terrorism?
Marketing Terrorism, the book, I had edited the book. I'm not a solo author, but they are the authors who are my organization team members. These people from Pakistan to Israel, from east to west, from Africa to the Western countries, they have contributed in writing and against the Islamist terrorism, because this is a marketing of terrorism in every region. So we countered. We means my team, including myself and my team of ITC, Islamic Theology Counterterrorism. They have brought research together and to counter terrorism within their own regions, whether it is in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, or Western countries. It's a fantastic book, Marking Terrorism. I think everyone should read it, because there's not only one writer, there are multiple writers of the ITCT. They have penned down their own experience and their own knowledge how to counter Islamist culture within their region, because every culture of terrorism is different in every country, in every region. Terrorism in Israel is completely different than the terrorism in the UK. Terrorism in the UK is completely different than the terrorism in Asia or in the Middle East. So those people who are living there, experiencing them, they are intellectual. So they are the people who can easily argue and counter their culture of terrorism very widely and perfectly. So this is how this book has been established, complete and complete with the different views of counter Islamist narratives and Islamic terrorism.
And let me end on this by talking about your third book, The Devil's Rebirth, the Terror Triangle of Ikhwan, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, IRGC, which is the Iranian Republican Guards, and Hezbollah. What did your research find you on what you call, and why do the title The Devil's Rebirth?
Again, this book I edited by me and comprised different research and different minds together against a triangle of three devil nexus: Ikhwan al-Muslimin, which called Muslim Brotherhood; IRGC, which is Iranian military, and Hezbollah, Lebanonian Islamist organization, Shia Islamist organizations. Devil's rebirth. There was one devil in the era, but now we are facing three devils in our region. Everywhere you can go: Asia, Middle East, South America, Western. This triangle exists very strongly and very powerfully in these all regions and countries. Not only Israel, but Western countries as well as Pakistan is a victim of Hezbollah, IRGC, and Ikhwan syndicates. So, editor of this book is give a reader a very broad knowledge of these three organizations, which are two are Shia organizations. First, one is a Sunni organization, but in in operational way, terrorism, in ideology, and in actions. These all organizations are sisters of each other. Ikhwan al-Muslimin, IRGC, and Hezbollah. And these organizations have a very strong and deep rooted networking in Western countries, in everywhere, Middle East, but specifically in the Western countries. IRGC have a networking, Hezbollah have organizations, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, I can give you one simple example that how Ikhwan al-Muslimin are very strong in the Western countries, especially in the UK, and I don't know why Western community, international community have a close eyes towards Ikhwan al-Muslimin. I believe this is a mother organization, ideologue mother organization of all Islamic terrorist organizations, whether it's Al-Muhajirun or Sharia for Britain, or we can Hizb Tahrir or Daesh or Al-Qaeda. Ikhwan al-Muslimin hold a big Islamic charity organization in UK, which generate millions pounds. Ikhwan al-Muslimins, the organizations, charity organizations or Islamic organizations which are affiliated directly or indirectly with Ikhwan al-Muslimin, they run more than 1,000 mosques, madrasas, Islamic community centers, and Islamic education centers only in the United Kingdom. These other organizations, Al Muhajirun or other militant organizations, these are the creation of those Islamist clerics. They have directly or indirectly links with Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. In Egypt, this is why I say Ikhwan al-Muslimin is a mother organization of all terrorist organizations, jihad organization across the globe, specifically in the Western world. I must say that they are very intelligent and very clever organizations, specifically Ikhwan al-Muslimin, because Ikhwan al-Muslimin they haven't done any direct involvement in a terrorism in the UK, but those all punters or sub-organizations which have linked directly or indirectly Ikhwan al-Muslimin, they have a committed act of terrorism. But the organization, they say, no, they are purely focusing on educational, Islamic education purpose, not on terrorist organization. Because this is how the ideologue organizations run in the Western countries, like Hizb Tahrir, like Ikhwan al-Muslimin. They don't involve themselves into direct terrorism. They save their sides. But those people like Al-Muhajirun leader Anjem Chaudhry. Anjem Chaudhry is a father of Islamists in the UK, and he was an ex-member of Hizb Tahrir. Now Hizb Tahrir can say, oh no, we can rid him off. Yes, of course you will rid it off because you don't want to get blamed. You can't take a credit of terrorism. So what you nurture these people, you indoctrinate these people, you made them a walking time bomb, and then you can rid it off. They could, okay, yeah, now you create your own organizations, and now you can do whatever you want. You have nothing to do with Hizb Tahrir because we have completed you, and we made them a walking time bomb. Now we get rid of you off, right? And now whatever you want to do it is you take a solo responsibility. Your Islamic organization take a solo responsibility, but behind they Hizb Tahrir or Ikhwan Muslimin, they don't take any type of responsibility. Remember this, my word. There are 1,000 organizations, thousands institutes, mosques, madrasas run by organizations. They have a directly, indirectly links with Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan Muslimin, only in UK. In the US, they have links with White House. They have links in 10 Downing Street. My organization is a very, very small organization. They can crash anytime. They are a millionaire. One person, one single person have a net worth of millions of pounds and dollars. They're people affiliated with Ikhwan al-Muslimin in UK. They have a good global networking. They have a good networking, and they have a direct influence in White House as well in the 10 Downing Street. This is how dangerous this organization is. So in this book, it has been mentioned how these organizations had created a networking overtly and covertly to destabilize democratic countries within and outside from cross border.
It's very important that viewers get copies of your book, particularly that one. And just to corroborate what you said, Noor, that here in Israel, an Israeli investigative reporter, Svika Yeskeli, spent some time in Britain and he went underground. And one of the things that he exposed, not just the radicalism that was being preached within the mosque, but also the money laundering that was going on in the Muslim community for Hamas, for instance. And the other thing that's yet to be exposed, but is known by Israeli intelligence, is in fact the massive multi-billion-dollar trade that Hezbollah is doing via Venezuela into Central America in the drug trade. That also a lot of the drugs, although you may see maybe on Fox News about fentanyl, so-called Chinese-made fentanyl being pushed into America by the ton by the Mexican cartels, but also what's not being said are the Hezbollah drugs being in cooperation with the cartels being brought into the United States that are killing people. That's why it's very important for people to get your book, and we can corroborate from here that what you've written there is known over here, probably known by the intelligence in Britain as well, but we don't see a great deal of movement about it. Noor, where can people get copies of your book? Do you have a website where they're listed, or they're available on Amazon?
Thank you very much, Barry. My books are available on Amazon across the globe. Amazon UK, US, any European country, India, Japan, China, Central Asia, or in the Middle East. Wherever the Amazon is, my books are available. And readers can they can read my views on my Twitter or on my LinkedIn or my email address, which is officially is Noor Noor November Oscar Romeo @itct.org.uk. There are so many ways people can contact me through the media, social media. I'm present everywhere, all the time.
Very good. And where can people find your articles, your research papers? Do you have a website that they should go to?
There are different newspapers, different websites. They can find through Google, or specifically they can view my personal articles, which I write against Islamist terrorism or jihadism, and they are widely available on my organization website, which is www.itct.org.uk, or they can easily write my name, Noor Dahri, on Google. They will find all my interviews, TV interviews, all my news articles in news in Urdu or mostly in English and Hebrew language, and Spanish, different German, French, Swedish languages.
I want to tell you that we at the Israel Institute of Strategic Studies would be very interested in adding your material onto our website as well, because I think it's very important that the more people not only listen to what we have to write and we have to say, but what people like you are researching and coming up with, and we need to spare this to a wider world. I want to thank you, Noor, for being my very special guest. I think your talk has been eye-opening for a lot of people. I think a lot of people will be more interested now to contact you that didn't know about you before. And I hope that we as a vehicle here at The View from Israel is helping you to do this.
Thank you very much, Barry. It will be my honor that I work and serve in your organization. IISS as an analyst or researcher, it will be great honor for me if there is any opportunity.
And I hope one day soon, post-corona, inshallah, that we'll be seeing you again here in Israel soon. Thank you, Noor, for being my guest. I'm very sure thank you for viewing The View from Israel. Please click like, hit the subscribe button, and please share Noor's words to everybody you know. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
אנו מכריזים בזאת